The galactic war had been raging for a decade, consuming entire systems in its relentless churn of destruction. The enemy, a coalition of ruthless conquerors known as the Dravarnaccord, had steamrolled their way across vast stretches of the galaxy, leaving countless civilizations in ruin. The Galactic Concord, a fragile alliance of peaceful species, had been struggling to hold the line, their resources and morale stretched thin. In the Grand Command Center of Concord Prime, a sprawling station orbiting the serene gas giant Illuries 9, the atmosphere was tense. Holographic displays projected a grim view of the battlefield, entire fleets obliterated, planets burning under the unrelenting assault of the Dravarn forces. Delegates of various species crowded the room, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. Crystalline beings shimmered with stress, insectoid representatives clicked their mandibles in agitation, and avian leaders fluffed their feathers in frustration. At the heart of the room stood Admiral Varese, a towering Zentari with an exoskeleton that gleamed under the room's soft lighting. She radiated authority, but even her commanding presence couldn't mask the desperation in her voice. "Another colony has fallen," she announced, her voice reverberating through the chamber. "Our fleets are scattered, our defenses overwhelmed. If we cannot turn the tide, the Dravarn will reach Concord Prime within the week." A murmur of despair rippled through the assembly, but one voice cut through the noise, a calm, confident voice with a distinct Terran accent. "Then it's time for humanity to step in." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Captain Elias Rourke, the lone human representative, in the chamber. Clad in a simple but pristine uniform, Rourke exuded an air of quiet determination. He was flanked by two aides, one of them a young engineer named Lieutenant Ava Langley, and the other a grizzled strategist, Commander Jonas Kess. Humanity, a relatively new member of the Concord, had largely stayed on the sidelines of the war, their military capabilities an enigma to most. Admiral Varese narrowed her multifaceted eyes. "Captain Rourke, with all due respect, your people have offered only logistical support until now. What makes you think humanity can succeed where others have failed?" Rourke's lips curled into a faint smile. "Because you've been fighting by the rules. We don't." Humanity's entry into the war wasn't without controversy. Many species viewed humans as unpredictable, their aggressive tendencies ill-suited to the Concord's measured approach. But with desperation mounting, the Concord's leadership had little choice but to accept their offer of assistance. Back aboard the Ulysses, a sleek and heavily modified human battleship stationed near the edge of the Illuries system, Rourke assembled his team. The ship's bridge was a hive of activity, its crew a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh recruits. Ava Langley, seated at her console, scanned the latest intelligence reports, her brow furrowed. "This isn't just about holding the line," Rourke said, addressing his senior staff. "The Dravarn are a war machine, relentless and efficient. If we're going to make a difference, we need to hit them where it hurts." Kess leaned forward, his gruff voice laden with skepticism. "You're talking about striking their command ship, aren't you?" Rourke nodded. "The Abyssal Wrath. It's the nerve center of their fleet. Take it out, and we cripple their operations." Langley's eyes widened. "But the Abyssal Wrath is protected by an entire armada. Even with our tech, getting close enough to deliver a strike seems impossible." Rourke's smile didn't waver. "Impossible is what humans do best." As preparations began for the mission, the Ulysses became a flurry of coordinated chaos. Engineers fine-tuned the ship's experimental stealth systems, while strategists pored over battle simulations. The crew, though anxious, carried an undercurrent of excitement. This was their chance to prove that humanity could stand among the galaxy's greatest powers. Rourke moved through the ship, his presence a steadying force. He stopped by the engine room, where Langley was overseeing adjustments to the ship's power core. She looked up, her face streaked with grease but her eyes sharp with determination. "You really think this will work?" she asked. "I don't think," Rourke replied. "I know." Langley smirked. "Well, let's hope the Dravarn aren't as good at improvising as we are." The day of the mission arrived. The Ulysses slipped into the Dravarn-controlled sector under the cover of its advanced cloaking field. Langley monitored the ship's systems with laser focus, while Kess coordinated with the tactical team. Rourke stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing their target, the massive, heavily armed Abyssal Wrath, its sleek black hull bristling with weaponry. "We've got one shot at this," Rourke said. "If they spot us before we're in range, we're done." The tension on the bridge was palpable as the Ulysses navigated through the enemy fleet. Every blip on the sensors felt like a potential death sentence. But the crew held their nerves, their faith in Rourke and each other unshakable. As the ship approached its target, Langley's voice cut through the silence. "We're within range of their sensor net. Cloaking field holding steady for now." Rourke nodded. "Prepare the strike package. Commander Kess, you're up." Kess grunted in acknowledgement, relaying orders to the strike team. A series of specialized drones were launched from the Ulysses, each carrying a payload designed to disrupt the Abyssal Wrath's shielding systems. The drones zipped through the void, their stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible. On board the Abyssal Wrath, the Dravarn command crew was oblivious to the approaching threat. Their confidence was bolstered by years of unchallenged dominance, their defenses seemingly impenetrable. But that confidence would soon be shattered. The drones reached their target, latching onto the Abyssal Wrath's hull. Langley's hands flew across her console, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "EMP payloads armed. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. A silent explosion rippled through space, and the Abyssal Wrath's shields flickered and failed. The bridge of the Ulysses erupted into action. "Shields are down," Langley reported. "We've got a window, but it won't last." Rourke didn't hesitate. "All power to forward weapons. Target their command module. Fire!" The Ulysses unleashed a devastating volley, its railguns and energy cannons tearing through the exposed hull of the Abyssal Wrath. Explosions rippled across the enemy ship, and for the first time in the war, the Dravarn knew what it meant to fear. The destruction of the Abyssal Wrath sent shockwaves through the Dravarn fleet. As the flagship's fractured hull erupted into a fiery cascade of debris, the once impenetrable armada faltered. For the first time in their ruthless campaign, the Dravarn commanders were forced to reckon with an opponent who had not only defied their might but dismantled their nerve center in a single, devastating strike. On the Ulysses, cheers erupted across the bridge. Engineers high-fived in the engine room, and tactical officers exchanged grins of satisfaction. But Captain Elias Rourke remained stone-faced, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Dravarn fleet regrouping. "Don't celebrate just yet," he said, his voice cutting through the jubilation. "We just poked a very angry hornet's nest." Commander Jonas Kess nodded grimly. "They'll be coming for us now. Full force. And they won't make the same mistake twice," added Lieutenant Ava Langley, her hands moving quickly to recalibrate the ship's sensor grid. "Exactly," Rourke said, his tone sharp. "We're not out of this yet. Prepare for the counterattack." The Dravarn fleet, thrown into chaos, didn't stay disorganized for long. Within minutes, smaller ships darted forward, forming an aggressive spearhead aimed directly at the Ulysses. Their objective was clear: eliminate the human vessel at any cost. On board the Ulysses, Langley's console lit up with warnings. "Multiple bogies inbound. Fast movers, corvettes and fighters. They're trying to swarm us. Helm evasive maneuvers," Rourke ordered. "Keep us at range. Tactical, deploy defensive drones." The Ulysses banked hard, its engines roaring as it weaved through the void. A swarm of autonomous drones launched from its hull, forming a protective perimeter around the ship. The drones' advanced AI allowed them to intercept incoming missiles and disable enemy fighters with precision strikes. The bridge was a hive of activity as the crew worked in unison to repel the attack. Kess barked orders to the weapons teams, while Langley fed real-time data to the drone operators. The ship shuddered as a stray plasma bolt grazed its shields, but the crew held firm. "Shields holding at 80%, Langley reported. "But we can't keep this up forever." "We won't have to," Rourke replied. "This is just the first wave. They're testing us. The real threat is coming." As the Ulysses fought off the initial assault, Rourke and his team worked to analyze the Dravarn's movements. Langley noticed a pattern emerging in their attack formations. "They're trying to hurt us," she said, her voice rising slightly with urgency. "They're funneling us toward their heavy cruisers." Rourke frowned, studying the holographic display. The Dravarn's larger ships were repositioning, their massive cannons trained on the Ulysses. If the human vessel was forced into their firing range, it would be annihilated. "We need a counter-move," Kess said. "Something they won't expect." Rourke's eyes narrowed as an idea took shape. "What they won't expect is for us to charge right at them." Langley stared at him, incredulous. "You want to fly straight into their kill zone?" "Not straight in," Rourke clarified. "We'll use their own formation against them. If we can get close enough, their heavy cruisers won't be able to fire without risking friendly fire. It's a classic blind spot in their strategy." Kess grinned, his gruff demeanor softening into admiration. "Bold. Suicidal, but bold." The Ulysses shifted course, accelerating toward the heart of the Dravarn fleet. Enemy corvettes swarmed to intercept, but the ship's drones worked tirelessly to clear a path. Inside the command center, tension reached a breaking point as every maneuver brought them closer to the Dravarn's heavy guns. "Closing in on the cruisers," Langley reported. 15 kilometers and counting. "Keep us steady," Rourke said. "We need to get right under their noses." The Ulysses barreled forward, its weapons firing in every direction to fend off the relentless assault. One of the corvettes managed to land a glancing blow, sending a tremor through the ship. "Damage report," Rourke barked. "Minor hull breach in Section 12, Langley replied. "Sealing it now. Shields at 50%. Hold it together, people," Rourke said, his voice firm. "We're almost there." As the Ulysses closed the distance, the Dravarn heavy cruisers hesitated. Their commanders realized too late that firing on the human ship would endanger their own smaller vessels. The hesitation created an opening, and Rourke seized it. "Now!" he shouted. "Target their engines. Full power to forward weapons." The Ulysses unleashed a devastating barrage, its railguns and energy cannons striking the lead cruiser's engine core. The massive ship shuddered violently before erupting in a chain reaction of explosions. Debris scattered in all directions, forcing the remaining cruisers to retreat. The bridge of the Ulysses erupted in cheers, but Rourke's focus remained razor-sharp. "Don't stop now. Press the advantage." Kess relayed the order, and the Ulysses surged forward, its crew pushing themselves to their limits. The Dravarn fleet, reeling from the loss of their flagship and a heavy cruiser, began to falter. Meanwhile, back at Concord Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle unfold through live feeds. The sight of a single human ship dismantling the Dravarn's once unstoppable forces left the chamber in stunned silence. "They're winning," Admiral Varese said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The humans are actually winning." Gras Tokna, the ever-critical delegate of the ZYX Dominion, hissed in frustration. "They're reckless. If they fall, the Dravarn will regroup and crush us." "But they haven't fallen," Lixon of the Elinari replied, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in admiration. "They've done more in hours than we've managed in years." Back on the battlefield, the Dravarn began their retreat. Their smaller ships scattered, their heavy cruisers limping away from the fight. The Ulysses, battered but victorious, held its position, its crew weary but triumphant. "Enemy forces retreating," Langley reported, slumping back in her chair. "We did it." Rourke allowed himself a rare smile. "Not yet. We need to make sure they don't come back." Kess grunted in agreement. "What's the plan, Captain?" Rourke's smile turned grim. "We're going to chase them all the way home." As the battered Dravarn fleet scattered into the void, the Ulysses launched into pursuit, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. For the first time in a decade, the hunters had become the hunted. On board, Captain Elias Rourke stood at the center of the bridge, his sharp gaze fixed on the holographic display tracking the retreating Dravarn forces. "They're heading for the Valise system," Lieutenant Ava Langley reported, her fingers flying over the console. likely to regroup at their forward command station. Commander Jonas Kess folded his arms, his expression grim. We can't let them re-establish control. If they fortify there, this fight starts all over again. That's not going to happen, Rourke said, his tone decisive. We take the fight to them. We finish what we started. Langley hesitated, her voice tinged with caution. Captain, the Valise system is deep in Dravarn-controlled space. Even with their fleet damaged, we'll be outnumbered the moment we arrive. That's why we'll need a plan that doesn't rely on numbers, Rourke replied. He turned to Kess. Prep the strike teams. We're going to hit them from the inside. The Ulysses entered the Valise system under the cover of its advanced stealth systems, its cloaking field rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of distant stars. Langley's console lit up with readings as the ship approached the Dravarn command station, a massive installation bristling with weapons and surrounded by a defensive fleet. There it is, Langley said, her voice quiet. The Dravarn's forward command. The station loomed large on the display, its sleek, angular design radiating menace. Dozens of ships orbited it, their formations tightening as they prepared for the inevitable counterattack. But Rourke had no intention of engaging them head-on. Langley, plot a course that keeps us out of their sensor range, Rourke ordered. Kess, deploy the infiltration team. We're going in quiet. Aboard one of the Ulysses stealth shuttles, the infiltration team prepared for their mission. Clad in advanced combat suits designed to minimize heat signatures and noise, they checked their equipment one last time. Kess, leading the team, addressed them with his usual gruff confidence. This isn't a glory run, he said. We're here to disable their command systems and sow enough chaos to give the Ulysses an opening. Stick to the plan, and we'll make it back in one piece. The shuttle launched, slipping through the Dravarn fleet undetected. As it neared the station, Langley guided it remotely from the Ulysses, her hands steady despite the tension. You're clear to dock, she said through the comms. But you'll need to move fast. Their patrols are starting to tighten. The shuttle latched onto a service hatch on the station's underside, and the team breached the airlock. Inside, the station's corridors were dimly lit and eerily quiet, the hum of machinery the only sound. Kess signaled for the team to split up, each group heading toward their designated targets: the reactor core, the communications hub, and the central command module. Kess's group moved swiftly through the station, disabling security systems and avoiding patrols. They reached the reactor core without incident, the massive chamber pulsing with energy. Plant the charges, Kess ordered. But don't detonate until we're clear. Meanwhile, the second group infiltrated the communications hub, uploading a virus designed to scramble the station's signals. The third group, led by a young but capable officer named Ensign Vega, reached the command module, where they hacked into the station's systems to disable its defenses. Back on the Ulysses, Rourke and Langley monitored the operation closely. They're in position, Langley reported. But the Dravarn are starting to notice something's wrong. Then we move to Phase 2, Rourke said. Prepare for an assault. If we hit them hard enough, they won't know what's coming. As the infiltration team carried out their objectives, the Ulysses decloaked and launched a surprise attack on the Dravarn fleet. The ship's weapons roared to life, targeting the enemy's defensive perimeter with surgical precision. The sudden assault threw the Dravarn forces into disarray, their formations breaking as they scrambled to respond. Direct hit on their lead cruiser, Langley reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. 2 more incoming, bringing them into firing range. Keep the pressure on, Rourke said. Don't let them regroup. The Ulysses danced through the battlefield, its agility and firepower outmatching the disorganized Dravarn ships. But as more reinforcements arrived from deeper within the system, the odds began to shift. We've got 5 more signatures inbound, Langley warned. Cruisers and frigates. Hold them off as long as you can, Rourke replied. The team needs more time. Inside the station, the infiltration team completed their objectives, but their luck ran out as alarms blared throughout the corridors. Dravarn soldiers swarmed the facility, cutting off their escape routes. Kess and his team found themselves pinned down near the reactor core, the glow of the charges they had planted casting eerie shadows on the walls. "We're out of time," Kess said, his voice grim. "Get the detonator ready." Back at the command module, Ensign Vega and her group were also under siege. She activated her comms, reaching out to the Ulysses. "Captain, we're surrounded," she said. "We've done what we can, but we won't make it out." Rourke's jaw tightened. "We're not leaving you behind. Hold your position." The Ulysses pressed deeper into the battle, its weapons blazing as it carved a path toward the station. Langley's fingers flew across her console as she coordinated the ship's systems, her voice cutting through the din. "We're almost in range for extraction," she said. "But the Dravarn are closing in." "Push harder," Rourke ordered. "We're not losing them." As the ship approached the station, Rourke made a bold decision. "Langley, activate the drone swarm." "Full deployment." The ship's hangar bays opened, releasing a swarm of combat drones that surged toward the station. The drones provided cover for the infiltration team, taking out Dravarn soldiers and clearing a path to the extraction point. Kess and his team fought their way to the shuttle, dragging wounded members but refusing to leave anyone behind. Vega's group joined them moments later, their faces etched with relief as they boarded. "We're clear," Kess reported. "Detonate the charges," Rourke ordered. As the shuttle raced back to the Ulysses, the station erupted in a series of explosions. The reactor core went critical, and the command module collapsed in a cascade of fire and debris. The remaining Dravarn ships, now leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat. The Ulysses picked up the shuttle, its crew cheering as the infiltration team returned safely. Rourke stood on the bridge, his expression unreadable as he watched the station burn. Langley turned to him, her voice quiet. "We did it." Rourke nodded. "Not just yet. Prepare for the next phase. We're not stopping until the Dravarn know they've lost." The shattered remnants of the Dravarn command station burned brightly in the void, casting an eerie glow over the retreating enemy fleet. The Ulysses stood resolute among the wreckage, its hull battered but its crew triumphant. On the bridge, Captain Elias Rourke allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction as he watched the Dravarn forces scatter into the darkness. But this wasn't over. Not yet. "They're retreating," Lieutenant Ava Langley reported, her hands deftly navigating her console. "But they're regrouping at their fallback position near Acheron 5. We've bought ourselves time, but they're not done fighting." "They will be," Rourke replied, his voice firm. "We're going to make sure of it." Commander Jonas Kess stepped up beside him, his arms crossed. "We've taken out their command station, crippled their leadership, and scattered their fleet. What's the next play, Captain?" Rourke turned to the tactical display, his gaze fixed on the glowing markers representing the enemy fleet. "We cut the head off the snake. Now we go for the body. No more skirmishes. We end this war here and now." Kess raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we push all the way to Acheron 5? That's deep in Dravarn-controlled space." "Exactly," Rourke said. "The Dravarn are on their heels. If we hit them hard and fast, we can break their momentum for good. But we'll need to make this count." The Ulysses prepared for what would be its most dangerous mission yet. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing damage from the previous battle and replenishing their depleted munitions. Langley coordinated with engineering teams to push the ship's systems to their limits, while Kess gathered the strike teams for a briefing. "This isn't going to be easy," Kess said, addressing the assembled soldiers. "The Dravarn know we're coming, and they'll throw everything they've got at us. But we've been underestimated before, and we've proven we can hit harder than anyone expects." The soldiers nodded, their determination palpable. They weren't just fighting for victory, they were fighting for survival. As the Ulysses entered the Acheron system, the scale of the Dravarn defenses became clear. Massive cruisers and frigates patrolled the sector, their formations tight and disciplined. The enemy fleet had regrouped, its numbers bolstered by reinforcements from neighboring systems. At the center of it all was Acheron 5, a fortress world bristling with planetary defense cannons and shield generators. Langley's voice was tense as she relayed the sensor readings. They've fortified their position. This won't be a repeat of Valise. It doesn't need to be, Rourke said. We're not here to fight their whole fleet. We're here to dismantle their command structure and make sure they can't recover. Kess glanced at the tactical display. That's a lot of firepower between us and their command module. Rourke smiled faintly. Then we'll give them something else to worry about. The Ulysses launched a wave of decoy drones, each broadcasting false signatures designed to mimic full-sized ships. The Dravarn fleet scrambled to respond, diverting their forces to intercept the perceived threat. Meanwhile, the Ulysses used its cloaking field to slip through the chaos, weaving between enemy patrols as it closed in on the planet. Decoys are holding, Langley reported. But they'll catch on soon. Then we move faster, Rourke said. Target their orbital defense platforms. We need to clear a path. The Ulysses unleashed a barrage of precision strikes, its railguns and energy cannons tearing through the orbital defenses. Explosions lit up the void as the platforms crumbled, their debris raining down on the planet's surface. Defense platforms neutralized, Langley said. We're in the clear, for now. The Ulysses descended into Acheron 5's upper atmosphere, its cloaking field straining under the pressure of the planet's intense electromagnetic interference. The ship's scanners identified the location of the Dravarn Command Center, a sprawling facility protected by layers of shielding and anti-aircraft batteries. We're not getting in unnoticed, Kess said, his tone grim. We don't need to, Rourke replied. We just need to get close enough to deliver the strike team. The ship's engines roared as it dodged incoming fire, its shields absorbing the brunt of the enemy's assault. Langley's hands moved frantically across her console as she rerouted power to critical systems. Shields at 40%, she reported. We can't sustain this for long. We won't have to, Rourke said. Kess, get your team ready. The Ulysses hovered above the command center, deploying its strike team in a series of drop pods. The pods pierced the facility's outer defenses, slamming into the ground with a resounding impact. Kess and his soldiers emerged, their weapons at the ready as they advanced through the chaos. Inside the command center, the Dravarn commanders scrambled to respond. Their forces were stretched thin, caught off guard by the precision and ferocity of the human assault. Kess's team moved quickly, planting charges on key infrastructure points and disabling the facility's shielding systems. We've breached their command module, Kess reported through the comms. Detonating charges now. Explosions rocked the facility, and the Dravarn's planetary defenses faltered. Back on the Ulysses, Rourke seized the opportunity. Langley, target their planetary shield generator. Full power to forward weapons. The ship's cannons roared to life, their energy beams piercing through the weakened defenses and striking the shield generator. The massive structure collapsed in a cascade of fire and debris, leaving the planet exposed. The destruction of Acheron 5's defenses marked the turning point in the battle. The Dravarn fleet, now leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. The Ulysses pursued them relentlessly, its weapons carving through their ranks with unyielding precision. As the last of the Dravarn ships fled the system, the crew of the Ulysses erupted into cheers. For the first time in years, the tide of the war had turned decisively in the Concorde's favor. Back at Concorde Prime, the Galactic Council watched the footage of the battle with awe. Admiral Varese addressed the assembly, her voice filled with conviction. Humanity has not only fought with courage but has shown us a new way to fight, one that combines strategy, ingenuity, and sheer determination. They have proven themselves indispensable to the Concorde. The chamber erupted into applause, and even the skeptical Grask Tokna of the Zewix Dominion remained silent, his usual criticisms drowned out by the overwhelming support for humanity. Aboard the Ulysses, Rourke stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Langley joined him, her expression one of quiet pride. We did it, she said. Rourke nodded. We did. But this is just the beginning. The Dravarn won't stop, and neither will we. Langley smiled. Then they'd better get used to losing. As the Ulysses prepared for its next mission, Rourke felt a sense of pride and purpose. Humanity had entered the war as an unknown force, underestimated by both allies and enemies. But now they were a beacon of hope, and a force to be reckoned with.